Okay, all set? Okay. Welcome to Hampton Falls School Board meeting. Bear with me for a minute as I need to read an emergency statement for those who have not attended a Hampton Falls School Board meeting on Zoom. As chair of the Hampton Falls School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Hampton Falls School Board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number, 929-205-6099, and the password is 878-674-362, or by clicking on the following website address. That is on the website. I'm not going to read it off, but you can go to the LAS website and find it. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the SAU 21 office at www.sau21.org. C, providing a mechanism for public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-926-8992, extension 103, or email at revans@sau21.org. D, adjourning the meeting if the public body is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call in attendance with each member stating their presence. Please state if there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting. All yours, Rhonda.
Okay, Greg Merrill.
Present, and no one's in the room.
Greg Parrish.
Present, family in and out of room.
Jason Farias.
Present, family in and out.
Jill Swayze.
Present, families in and out.
And John Bailey.
Present, all in the room.
Okay, I have the roll call.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the June 29th, 2020 school board meeting minutes. Any conversation, topic, questions, anything like that for anyone?
Nope.
Since no discussion, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, Rhonda?
Greg Parrish.
Yes.
Jason Farias.
Yes.
Jill Swayze.
Yes.
John Bailey.
Yes.
And Greg Merrill.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. Item number 2, August 7th, 2020 school board meeting minutes. Any discussion regarding these minutes as presented? Since there's no discussion, can I get a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
And roll call, Rhonda.
Jason Farias.
Yes.
Jill Swayze.
Yes.
John Bailey.
Yes.
Greg Merrill.
What was the date on this? I'm sorry, I missed.
That's August 7th, Greg.
Yes.
Oh, okay. August 7th. Abstain.
And Greg Parrish.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is our financial report. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? So we have included the year-to-date expenditure report. for fiscal year 2020, 2021. As you will see, and we're only a month into the fiscal year, so most of our accounts are in good standing. I'll also point out that the salary accounts, most of them have not been encumbered because the majority of our salaries our employees do not start working until the end of August and September. So that will be reflected probably at the next board meeting. Otherwise, the only other account I would like to point out is on page 4. You'll see under equipment in the buildings department, we're over budget by just over $31,000. This represents the cost of the new kitchen, freezer, and refrigerator that we are installing. Those funds will be taken from the building maintenance expendable trust as voted on by the board. So that once that's done, this account will go back to a positive balance. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Any questions for Matt?
Greg, I just have one for both Matt and Beth, I guess. Are we expecting a variance this year in the special ed account similar to last year, or do we think we've got it better dialed in this year?
So we had budgeted for special education based on the information we had, obviously in the fall. Without going into detail, Melissa, has any significant changes that you know of since the budget process? Nothing that I'm aware of.
No, I wouldn't say there have been any significant special ed changes that I can think of. Whereas in the previous year, there was some very significant unanticipated costs.
Right. Yeah. So if you recall, which I'm sure this is the reason why John is inquiring, last year we had a number of out-of-district placements that were not budgeted for, and we ended up going over budget by, I think, close to $200,000. Again, we don't anticipate that being the case this year. However, obviously, we are, at the mercy of any move-ins or changes in student need. However, at this point, there's none to speak of.
Understood. Thank you.
Matt, I have a couple questions. Did we budget any sort of Ballard type protection for that freezer that will jut out from the side of the building? And if not, can we get some quotes on that?
Yes, so we are installing bollards around the freezer and refrigerator that will be jutting out from the building. I think by 4 or 5 feet, and that is directly adjacent to the parking lot, into the parking lot. So bollards are an important protection. And Alan has already acquired quotes and is planning on installing those as part of this overall project.
And will that come out of that building trust as well, or will that be a budget expense?
I believe that's included in the overall cost. That'll be coming out of the building maintenance expendable trust.
Okay.
I will verify which account we plan on taking it out, but as I recall, it's coming out of the trust.
Okay. And can you give a quick update on both that project as well as the Wi-Fi project?
Certainly. So the kitchen project is probably another week to 2 weeks to completion. So the old freezer and refrigerator are already removed, and the construction has started as far as opening, the prep work that's necessary. We're laying down the slab, opening up the wall, and then we'll install the new unit. So I believe it should be completely finished within 2 weeks.
Okay.
The wireless, I believe we are done. Beth, can you confirm that's been?
No, it has not been done yet.
Okay.
I talked to Zach Lemaire the week before last, and apparently the hardware that's involved in the project, that company was off for several weeks. So it's a little bit delayed. I'm still hoping it's done before the school year starts,
Thank you.
especially since all the wiring would be disruptive if we're in school.
And that's an important project because even though we are planning to be in school, we do have the expectation that all of our classes include that an online component, so that we are prepared should we go into a remote environment. So that the bandwidth and the ability to have good wireless is extremely important. So I'll make sure that I link up with Beth and Zach and make sure that we do complete that project, hopefully in a timely fashion. We are seeing some supply chain issues, I will say, on technology. We saw that with our Chromebooks purchases. Obviously the demand is extremely high, so I'm not necessarily surprised to hear that there are some issues with the company. But that being said, we will push them to move that project forward.
Okay. Any additional questions for Matt? Thanks, Matt. Item number 4 is public comment. Rhonda, let you explain how you do this because I'm sure I will mess up your explanation. But we'll open the floor to public comment on agenda items.
So anybody that wants to provide a comment to the board, what we ask is for you in the Zoom app just to be able to select raise your hand. And when I see that your hand is raised, what I'll do is I'll give you permission to speak through the Zoom app. And in that way you will be able to talk to the board, let them know your question or concern. And then, but when you do speak, we do ask you to provide your full name and your address and your affiliation with the school. So if anybody has any questions or comments on the agenda, if they want to raise their hand now through the Zoom platform. And I'm not seeing any yet. Greg, I don't see any hands going up.
Okay. Going once. Going twice. Okay, Rhonda will close public comment at this time.
Okay.
The next item is the return to school presentation from Beth. Now, if I can ask the board, I'm sure we have a lot of questions. This is going to be a more detailed presentation than we received the other day. So what I would like to do is have Beth do the presentation in its entirety and then ask our questions afterwards if no one objects.
So Greg, I have a few
Yes.
comments to sort of introduce and updates. Believe it or not, updates since we were together. Was it Friday morning? So a couple things just before, and you do want to spend most of your time on this great presentation that of the work to date that Beth and her team have done. They're really to be applauded for a great effort. So we had a survey go out today. That survey has gone out to the parents of students in all 4 of our locations where plans were approved for in person. So about 900, representing about 900 students. That survey has gone out. It asks them to tell us, are you interested in person or are you interested in the Remote Learning Academy? And Dr. Hobbs did a fabulous job of putting together a set of points, talking points, if you will, on those. And then buildings are sending out their plans after, whether it's in a letter, whether it's a presentation like this, all those kinds of things will be going out. And we're giving people till Monday. I can tell you the survey's been out for about 4 hours. And as of 6:30, we have 265 responses. And 57 of them are from Hampton Falls. So a very, very good start. We do need to hear from everyone. And when we don't hear from someone, we're going to, after Monday, we'll be contacting them because we do need answers on these data points. It also has the school calendar that's been approved with students starting on September 8th. That was also part of that mailing. The other thing that I mentioned to the board Friday night, and just in the sort of the interest of how mutually dependent we are with districts around us, last night the Exeter Cooperative Board did vote to take the entire K-12 SAU 16 district remote to start the year. And as we've discussed about our employees who live in different communities, that will have an impact on us, on our districts, and we're going to be weighing that over the next few days through Monday, Tuesday, as we get those survey results back. I've had a number of questions about the metrics, particularly from schools that are starting remote, about the kinds of things we're going to look at, and we are going to put together some sort of set of metrics that we'll be watching throughout the fall. I mean, one in those schools that are starting remote, or starting with the enhanced remote or enhanced virtual, is the numbers of students that we're able to bring in for small groups. We're looking to start that. That will be part of that program, and we'll be increasing those numbers throughout. We had a good conversation, for example, with Mr. McGowan today about orientation for ninth graders and what he's looking at to do that. Small groups, up to 30 students at a time, divided into groups, tour the school, session outside with current students, all those kinds of things that'll be in place. We had a great conversation at Seabrook Middle about the kinds of things they're thinking about in terms of bringing kids, small groups of kids in. So that'll be part of the metrics. We'll obviously continue to look at the rates with respect to the virus in the area. We're going to look at our nurse data in schools that are in. And you saw in that presentation last Wednesday, there are a number of sort of these indicators where nurses are going to be working with families to have students or staff members leave school if they have certain symptoms. Again, every chance I get, and I see we have 52 people in attendance, so I'll say it again. This whole plan falls apart if people don't stay home when they're sick. We've seen that all over the country already. And sort of how we look at providing accommodations for our employees. Those will be some of the metrics that we'll build in. Again, our goal is, even where we're starting in a virtual experience, we're looking to bring kids back in more groups over time, and hopefully at some point in the year get to the point where we're bringing all kids back. So I just want to say that as an introduction of some issues that have happened, believe it or not, since we met on Friday morning. And so, yeah. And so what I want to do now is turn it over to Beth to make this really terrific presentation on the work that they've been doing at Hampton Falls to bring kids back to school. Principal Rossi.
Oh, thank you. David Hobbs is going to help me out by being the
You got it.
He's going to show our presentation for us.
One sec, guys. All right. Okay, you guys should be able to see the screen now.
Yes.
All right, Beth, just let me know when you want me to go.
No, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lupini. And hello, everybody that is out there that I cannot see. Can't wait to see you in person. But we put together a plan for you tonight that, is meant to give you a whole lot more detail. And it's our return to school plan with restrictions. And I know restrictions is the key word, which we'll get into. But I tried to put myself in the place of a family. And I know that you're making some heart-wrenching decisions. So I tried to give you the details so that you could see your child within the school building and see where they are and how they might feel and what they'll be surrounded by. Next page, Dave. There are many layers to this planning. I know I'm the spokesperson here this evening, but Alan LaJoy, our facilities director, has been really hard at work with his team all summer and beyond. And this, we still have a long way to go if we are back in school, but he has this place looking in tip-top shape, as he always does. The logistics of this plan, I put together a plan initially when the survey results came in and Dr. Lupini kind of gave us the green light, you will be heading back to school. I had thought about a variety of different things, but when I put a plan together, I began to meet with our leadership team at Lincoln Ackerman, and they have been absolutely amazing in helping with all of the details. And their voice is very much representative in this plan. And I just want to give them a shout out. We are a representative group of the entire school. So Amy Middleton representing K2, Jess Mason also K2, but also special ed, Barb Cutting in 3 to 5, Lisa Woodruff 6, 7, and 8, Angelina Gagnon represents our EAs, and Emily Stockbridge represents our unified arts staff, and Melissa McKeon and I are the administrators as part of the group, and we meet all year. Academics, our whole staff will get together for several days before school, and we'll be able to talk about that more in depth at our next meeting. Special education, Melissa McKeon and her entire special education staff here will have a lot to say in this plan as well. Health wellness, Heather Boyd, our school nurse, has been attending meetings with local nurses and doctors throughout the region and beyond, and they are constantly gathering the most up-to-date information that they can so that we're the safest we absolutely can be when we return. Families and communities, I know I empathize with the decisions that you need to make. And we would love to be back in school, so we are here to present to you, first of all, the healthiest plan that we can come up with using all of our resources, but also how can you help us out in doing that. The next page, Dave. This is just a snapshot of what we're going to cover. We have created small cohort groups that we'll put our school into, and I'll get into those in depth. Outdoor learning, we are gifted with a tremendous piece of property here in Hampton Falls, and we're going to use quite a bit of it to do outside learning, which is a whole lot safer and less restrictive for kids in terms of that's going to be our opportunity to give them breaks with masks. Guidelines while in the building and all of the restrictions that go with that. Grab and go lunch. Obviously lunch is going to look a little bit different. Blended learning, what will that look like? And how can we be ready while we're in school to prepare in the event that we go back out? And obviously our plans to be ready to adjust pretty quickly in a moment's notice. The next page is a pod concept, and I promise those tigers will be a whole lot more socially distanced when we do get back. This plan, though, is an all hands on deck approach. And what I mean by that is I need all of our staff members to make a contribution to make this work. It divides Lincoln Ackerman into 3 separate pods, and within those pods are very small cohort groups that your children will be in daily. Lincoln Ackerman has enough space in this building. I feel like I know this building by heart after all that construction and everything last year. And we are able to really spread people out and really not have a whole lot of overlap in our pods. And I'll demonstrate that in a moment. Children, although small cohort groups are the name of the game, it's kind of impossible to have just that. So I've created a plan along with our leadership team to have children in the cohort groups, but they'll also have their own entrances, exits, hallways, bathrooms, and even potentially a bus, but that's undetermined. Next page, David. This is a visual of the internal map of our building that we use for all of our fire drills and everything. And I just wanted to demonstrate to you what it will look like if you're a visual learner. As you look at the map, you would be standing out on the driveway that faces the school. The entire blue section would be our K1-2 pod. The green over on the left is the new wing of the building, upstairs and downstairs, and that would be grades 3 to 5. And the orange represents grades 6 through 8. Next page, David. Pod 1, this just gives you more detail in what I'm talking about. If your child is in kindergarten or grades 1 or 2, which if all families opted into this plan, we would have 59 students, 4 classroom teachers, and 1 educational assistant that is not special ed related would be attached to our kindergarten because that's a little bit of a larger group. 2 unified arts teachers. We have not determined that as a staff yet who they would be. And the plan for unified arts teachers would be to remain attached to each pod for at least 9 weeks. Then we'd give it a break and we'd switch groups if all is going well with that plan. 6 to 9 weeks. Entrance and exit would be the red doors. And then there's also another door, if you're not aware of it, at the very end of the hallway, which is right out here beyond our courtyard. And those students would be, we would plan for them to be in and out, obviously in an orderly way, but that's dedicated just to that pod. They have full bathrooms for boys and girls right on that hallway, and those would be dedicated just to this pod of kids. They also would have 2 extra classrooms for breakout space, and each of the groups would have that. If they wanted to get into even smaller groups, they can do that in these spaces. And so therefore, I would include the art room at the end of the hallway and dedicate it to this group. The next one, David. Grades 3 to 5 would be in the new wing. We have the ability to even close those doors if we needed to, so that those kids truly have a very secluded space all to their own. Currently, I would have to move a second section of grade 3 into that new space. And on the second floor, I would have to move 2 6th grade classrooms out, but we have the means to do that. They would have their own stairway up and down that would just be dedicated to this pod. And that's on the end of the building, on the playground end. And they also have their own door out that on the back end of the playground as well. Next one. Grades 6 to 8, they were the orange group. They also would come in the real front door that we have here that we have available again. They are a little bit larger group. They would have 6 classroom teachers, 2 unified arts, and then special ed staff as determined by IEPs, as it is in every pod. They also have a set of bathrooms right on that hallway that would be dedicated just to them. They are going to have access to 2 stairways, one on each side of them. I'm going to maintain that they use the science lab downstairs so that they would come up and back down that stairway. They also would have 2 extra classroom spaces for breakout groups as well. And in this, all 3 pods, we will recreate fire drills for each group. Normally, in normal times, that I hope we do see again, we all would empty out into the ball field out back. And obviously that's a pretty large group, so we would no longer do that. So each of the fire drills and safety plans would be recreated for each of the pods while we're in this formation. Next, Melissa, this one's yours.
Sorry, to unmute myself. Can everyone hear me? I'm not always good at projecting. Good, okay. So in the model that Beth is presenting, where we're in person, the special education services and related services, reading, Title I services, they would all be tailored to the student. They would be outside of the classroom. So instead of having adults go from one cohort to another, kids would come out to see the specialist. If we had to do some small groups, we'd ensure that the students, we would only have small groups where those students are from the same pod. So for instance, we wouldn't have 2nd and 3rd grade students together in a small group because they're in 2 different pods. So again, trying to preserve those cohorts. And if possible, once we have a better sense of the numbers, we would keep staff with the same pod or cohort as much as possible. If a parent were to choose the remote learning academy, the way special education would look would again be very individualized. It would be either coordinated remotely, as we did last spring, or it might be in person and some small groups. And the way we would make some of these decisions would certainly be individualized, but would also be driven by a rubric that talks about the need for face-to-face. You know, how necessary is that for the service? How responsible or how able is the student to practice safety and hygiene and things like that. If students were to be, were to have services in the school building, But outside of the school day, we would provide transportation for that. Evaluations would be held in person with precautions, such as the tabletop plexiglass. And Beth will get to a later slide about special ed meetings, but we would continue to have those virtually to the maximum extent possible. Anything I missed, Beth?
No, you're great. I'm sure we'll catch it in questions. This next side, Lincoln Ackerman is also very gifted with property. And I know that our very generous group of parents that formed together over a year ago to create playground and outdoor learning space for us, we actually never got to use that. I can't believe the fact that all that happened, and maybe it was really meant to help rescue us from this situation, but we have ample space to create many different outside learning spaces for staff to use. The picture on the left is, these are drone photos, compliments of Alan LaJoy, but I just wanted to give you a visual of what they could look like. If you look at the one on the left, and you go deep down before they hit the woods, we can create an entire classroom down there, and probably another one right on the other side of the trees because they're far enough apart. If you look at the little space at the bottom of the screen to the left, Lowe's donated a 12 by 12 beautiful gazebo to us that's going to be installed in that space. That also is perfect for a small group, small cohort group. On the picture in the upper right-hand corner, if you look at that stage that's right there, that's another opportunity for any type of activity outside. And then up in the corner, we can also place another one. It's our plan to put some type of a platform down on the ground. I also have an idea for little seats that will be out there for children to sit down on, but also to have some type of a covering over the top. Jason Farias and I have met several times to actually plan this out quite a bit, and it's our hope that it comes to fruition for the start of the school, because outdoors is the name of the game. And I do completely realize that Mother Nature has to be really good to us, and that it probably will only last for probably about 6 or 7 weeks if we're lucky, before the bad weather really sets in. And then hopefully we can come up with some different type of plan. But it's actually a great space that I want to really put to use. And not just for now, not just because we're in this COVID situation, but I think this was the plan for this space all along. So this gives us the opportunity to really get it to come to fruition. David? Okay, that kind of, oh, also I forgot to mention that we do have various picnic tables, in that we will spread those out all around the property. If people want to do some very small group work, or you're reading a story or things of that nature, or even get out and draw, do science, whatever the imagination of a teacher, wherever that takes them, we do have ample space for that. This is actually, the next two slides are probably in my mind and in my heart, probably the two most important. Student wellness. Obviously, all of our planning is developing a safety net for all of our children to come back to Lincoln Ackerman. We really want to get them back into the building and begin to build a foundation that will pave the way toward getting past this whole pandemic. Additionally, you know, if their basic needs don't come first, then learning is not going to take place. So all of the physical needs we're talking about, but additionally, our staff has worked really hard on social, emotional education and goals, and we will continue to do that. And also to be talking about their mental wellness first. I think it's critically important that in school we begin to develop and establish routines. We live in an unstable world right now. I'm sure our children feel it as much as we do, but routines for children are a must, and they begin to really calm them. It's more predictable, and all of the routines that we begin at the start of the school year, a lot of them will be a blended learning approach. I'll give you an example. The leadership team and I talked at great length. Even our school announcements in the morning, it's a privilege for the older kids to do the announcements. We're going to begin to do those, have all of our students log in because they need practice with it, And we'll do those virtually with the older kids, so that if we ever did go back into remote learning, I know that sounds very simple, but those are the types of routines that if we do have to pivot into remote learning, that those routines of our school day will remain in place, and that we can actually have some semblance of a Lincoln Ackerman day. Helping kids to really feel a sense of connection is incredibly important. We want to connect children to their teachers, to each other, and create a purpose for them being in school together here at Lincoln Ackerman. We always had a tremendous spirit here, and I know we're reinventing what our school looks like, but the human engagement will be the same, and I think it's going to be critically important to the success of this plan, especially now. We miss each other, there's no doubt. Student voice. I think engaging students in the conversation about how we can make all of this better, especially our older kids. I think they have a lot of great ideas. You know, they always say out of the mouths of babes. I mean, we intend to get, I know back in the spring they had quarantine teams, so perhaps we can create return teams and really begin to listen to children. How are they feeling? How are they doing? What can we do better? What can we do better together? Blended learning, like I mentioned, will continue, and that's going to continue on a lot of different levels. We can be a lot better at remote learning, and we know that, but by continuing the remote part of it while in the school day, not completely, don't get me wrong, we just want to make sure that they're prepared if in the event we go out again. And we need to reimagine our school spirit. You know, I go back to a school parade. I never ever thought I would be doing a parade for 3 hours through Hampton Falls and loving every moment of it. But that's school spirit reimagined. What can we do, even though we're in our separate pods, what can we do here to re-engage our spirit together? The next slide is just equally important. How are we going to take care of our teachers and staff? I fully acknowledge that our staff will be coming back into this building with fears of their own. They have small children, they have families, they live with the elderly, and gosh, some of us are somewhat elderly. We all have our different fears, so I want to make sure that our adults have an opportunity to connect and heal. We haven't connected in a physical space for a long time. Even though we're in the building together, our meetings will probably be remote, but more often more meaningful, and connecting us not through just the mind, but also through the heart. We plan on maintaining our school improvement goals without adding on any new initiatives in 2021. Our goals are strong, and I'll get to those before this presentation ends, but I think it's important that we really begin to focus on what's in front of us and getting to the other end much stronger than when we came into this school year. I'd love to continue to find small spaces within this school to give our staff a place to go and be quiet if they have a moment in time, just to re-energize. I'm not kidding anybody when we all know that this is going to be difficult, but I think by creating a community of care and caring about everyone from top to bottom, however old we are here, that we take care of one another and pay attention to how people are feeling. And then it's, I have heard from our staff loud and clear that they want more opportunities to be together. We've always had fabulous staff meetings, and we want to continue to get together in different ways, whether it's in teams or whether it's whole staff, so that we can connect and make sure that this path we're on is strong and remains strong throughout our time here. That's good. Okay, all the things that I didn't want to start with, but are an evil necessity to get us through this pandemic. Obviously, safety is the name of the game at Lincoln Ackerman, and masks will be required. Masks are not just about the adults, they're also about the kids, and they're actually a way that we can help each other and help each other stay safe. So putting on masks and practicing wearing them is really important, and it will be, and that they're worn properly. Masks can be removed outside. That's why we're creating so much outdoor space. I think it'll be important as we get used to all of this and build our endurance with them on. Staff and kids can certainly bring their own masks to school, but given the amount of lunches and gym clothes kids forget, we'll also have masks, surgical masks available here in the event that they forget one. Mask breaks, our staff, we haven't been together as a full staff yet, but we'll talk about that. And I know a lot of teachers have already had a lot of great ideas to do just that. And I'm sure we'll need them too. Classrooms will be arranged. Classrooms are not going to look like they normally have. We have to separate kids by 6 feet apart. Our classrooms, depending on the size of the class, we actually have some really good sized rooms. But the 6 foot separation will be with the desks, and Alan and I have gone through the rooms, and we are actually going to have to probably bring a lot of things out of rooms, a lot of bookshelves, a lot of tables, and a lot of things like that to dedicate the space just to that. Next slide, David. All students and staff will be required to self-screen daily prior to going to school. This information, this actually entire page, is coming right from the presentation from the other night that was conducted with our joint board. Students and staff must stay home if they don't feel well. Dr. Lupini said from the outset that is a must to make any of these in-school plans work. No aspect of an in-person model works if parents and students don't follow that. Traveling internationally or even outside of New England requires a 14-day quarantine upon return. And protocols are currently in development with school nurses across the SAU, and specifically pertaining to Lincoln Ackerman. Heather Boyd will present those to us when they're complete. Buildings and facility use. Student field trips obviously are not going to take place. The use of the buildings is, we actually, you know, with this plan and all the details that go in it, we are not permitting outside individuals really in the building as best we can. Parents who have meetings and things like that, we will try to do them virtually to the fullest extent possible. Any types of things. We've had scouts ask us, we've had other groups ask us to use our building, and that's not going to happen right now. I don't know if it will later on or not, but not right now. So access to the buildings is limited to our students. If children forget something from school, we'll probably have a drop off right out front so that a parent doesn't even have to come into the building to do that. If you do need to get into the building though, and we do have an appointment, we can certainly arrange to do that. Next, David. Alan has a full plan for the building. I'll just give you the bullets, but obviously hand sanitizers are also the name of the game. Washing hands regularly for kids. So we have a lot of sinks in our classrooms as well. So they'll be used often with those children in those rooms. But the bathrooms, rooms, everything, we have hand sanitizers everywhere. He has plans for classrooms, offices, and stairways. Their focus is on touch surfaces. I'm sure all the parents out there, you know everything your child touches, door handles, windows, you know, all those types of things. He's got a specific focus on those. He's using all CDC approved disinfectants, and the nurses in room and kitchen on a nightly basis get a very specialized cleaning that is part of his plan. Thriving instead of surviving. You know, we really want to continue the work that we have already been engaged in for a year or 2 years, depending on the goal. But our competency-based education will continue this year as part of our academic goals for students. Social emotional learning. We were off to a really great start with that last year. We had, as a staff, begun to develop a common language. So we will circle back probably to the beginning of all of that, and then to continue with it as the year goes on. And there's probably never been a time where it's as important it is right now. And then remote learning improvement. You know, when we left on March 13th, you know, we went straight into remote learning, and we've learned a lot from it. We want to improve with it, and that will be one of our major goals this year. So we are not in survival mode. We really want to thrive as a staff and get better with no new initiatives. And connecting the LAS community. I mean, I think the triangle on the right is significant. There is a lot here. There is a lot being asked of all of us to get back into this building. And it's going to take students, it's going to take teachers and staff, and it's going to take families, all that teamwork, if it gets us back in and we create a community of caring for one another and helping one another out. I do believe that this could be a successful plan. How can you help us? Have your children start to practice wearing masks now. They are going to be a fact of our lives for the unforeseeable future, but please, if you could, if we are back in the building, don't wait until September where a teacher has to do that. We really want to build endurance with kids, and if you could help with that beginning now, I think that's really important. Our health, like we've said a couple of times, our health depends on everyone adhering to this plan. And continuing a caring of culture is important to us. We've always had that here at Lincoln Ackerman, and this is a completely different situation than any of us have ever been in, and we know it's not going to be easy, but we do think that together we can accomplish that. And to keep the lines of communication open, I would hope, if we're still moving in this direction, within a couple of weeks that we conduct another Zoom meeting that really gives all the finer points that we've learned in the next couple of weeks coming up. I think numbers are going to obviously fluctuate when those surveys come back, and then we'll really know what we are dealing with. I have not mentioned a pickup and drop off. I'm hoping that if the numbers indicate, I think we can do that alphabetically, but I think that's something in the next step that I can clarify for everybody. We can't do it without you, though. That's very clear. And, you know, I think this teamwork is going to be critical to our success. Do I have another slide? Yes, things to consider. I know Dr. Lupini, I'm saying the same thing. He is here, that those numbers are coming in, and obviously this plan will be adjusted once we know what adults are here and how many children specifically are here. I know you can't see a classroom right now, but a lot of furniture and other things are going to have to either go into storage or be stored somewhere so that we can space desks out 6 feet apart. Recess has to be reimagined, and I'm not there yet. I actually am going to really sit down with staff to see how we can do that. We know movement, we know breaks are critically important, but recess as we knew it obviously must change. I also want to talk about FM systems for each teacher. You know, when I'm up in a classroom and, you know, you look at how a classroom is normally set up, you have children pretty much at the center. They're obviously closer together. By being spread apart, they're further apart, further away from a teacher. And then when you add a mask, FM systems are surround sound. And although we've used them for, in some cases for hearing impaired children or adults, that they are a universal accommodation. And I think it would be important to talk about those now and how could they help us with acoustics in a classroom under these conditions. We will be preparing for remote learning while we're in school, to be continued with that, but I think that's a must. We could be out at any moment, we all know that. And then arrival and dismissal. Again, I know when I look at our Lincoln Ackerman student roster, that so many families have children at each of the grade levels or in each of the pods. So I'm hoping to make it simple for you and do it alphabetically. But that concludes what I have for tonight. I'm sure there are a myriad details that haven't been.
Thanks, Beth. That was fantastic. I'll open the floor to the board right now. Any questions that any of you have? at this point. Just go ahead, Joe.
Well, I see John trying to talk. So John, you
John,
want to
you're
go first
muted.
or unmute?
John, you're on mute.
Jill, go ahead. Thanks.
Then I was muted. Thank you, Beth, very much. It was really nice to see the thought and detail that's gone into that. And I know there's still so many factors that need to come together and understood before any triggers can be pulled. I'm curious if staff have seen this beyond through the leadership team. I see many staff on the participant list. Is this their first time exposed to it, or have some of them had this information already?
This is the first time many of them have seen it. I've been very reluctant with the constant changes to get plans out there published without going through, first of all, the superintendent, without going through the board, and then having plans out there that may or may not happen. So I waited for this moment to do it.
Okay, yep, that's fair. So my follow-up was what was the general response, but we don't know yet. And of course, you know, do you have a sense, assuming COVID numbers stay the same in our area, do you have a sense of when you're looking at commitments from families as far as whether they'd like in-school option or remote learning option, or is it a little too soon to say when we're going to draw that line?
No, I think that's what Dr. Lupini was referencing, if he'd like to speak to that again. You're muted.
You're muted, Bill.
Thank you. We have a survey out there now. It went out today, and we're asking for people to respond to it by Monday afternoon at 4. And we know we won't get everyone, although we're doing really well on day 1. And we'll follow up with families who we don't hear from starting late Monday afternoon.
Great, thank you both.
Welcome.
Yeah, Bill, we talked about this Friday. I just want to be clear that if I'm a parent and I put down a selection in the survey, that's not set in stone. I can change that at any time. Is that true or false?
So the choice here would be the Remote Learning Academy or the in-person. And insofar as we have space, as Beth's described, you have a choice. We expect some people will modify those decisions up till the beginning of the year. What we're trying to do now is really get down to that detail of what number of students do we have in 4th grade, and can we make this plan work with the social distancing and classroom sizes and that kind of thing. But there'll be some flexibility up until the beginning of the year with that. Yes.
But afterwards, we're going to hold.
Well, so afterward, the remote learning academy, because we're running it with the other districts.
Yeah.
So we've asked people that and they'll continue to get some information, and there may be something in there that says, you know, that's not for me. Although we think we've put out a lot of sort of information on what that looks like now. We've asked for people to stick with us for the first trimester in the remote learning academy.
Okay. Good. Just want to get a sense. Those are some, just a sense of how that. And I agree. I know you've done quite a bit of work there. Thank you, David Hobbs. And good. And I guess while we're talking about that, the alignment with the RLA and regular in-school curriculum, can you just speak to that quickly? I guess, David.
Yeah,
David?
Thank you for that, Jason. That's a really good question. It's one we've been hammering on quite a bit. While all of our grade level courses do have the same essential standards and competencies, there is a possibility that those are ordered differently in an RLA curriculum as opposed to in the face-to-face curriculum. So what we're going to have to do, to Beth's point, is we're going to have to create those connections between the school districts and the Remote Learning Academy to make sure that when and if those gaps do appear, that we have a process, you know, to your point, if we want to mitigate jumping back and forth as much as possible, but if that does happen, we want to make sure that we address any of those gaps that do occur there. It's on our radar, and it's something that has to happen in PD sessions on our 7 days prior to the year.
So we're right at the beginning in terms of looking at our employees. and sort of who's going to manage the remote learning academy for
Sure.
it, what teachers will we,
Sure.
right? So we're just at that phase of this week into early next week.
Right. Oh, and obviously that'll get published when you refine that plan. But that's good to hear that there'll be, the plan for monitoring, assessment, competency-based assessment, and going back and forth. You have in the works that thought process that, yes, they may not be exactly synchronized. However, at the end of the day, we're looking at competency achievement for our students.
That's right.
And that's the goal. And,
Yes.
Okay.
Greg? Parrish?
Yeah.
I would like to circle back. I don't think I was clear. I'm realizing I mentioned it briefly and didn't come back to it, is the abbreviated day. And what I meant at the beginning with all hands on deck, in order to create this in the small cohort groups and the pods, it takes our entire staff to do it. So essentially what I've done is I've backloaded their prep time into the end of the day. So it's an abbreviated day for children, but a full day for staff.
Because you're using it for that prep time and
Yes.
those other aspects that would normally be baked in all over the schedule.
Right.
Yes.
And it requires as many adults as we can to accomplish this.
And every one of our districts who's bringing in kids in person is looking at some slightly different version of that. And Beth, I know you've talked to the other principals and you've all sort of prepared notes on that, which is terrific.
Beth, you mentioned fire drills. Have you had a chance to meet with Jay yet to talk about this plan and look at exits and entrance so that we're all set?
Not yet, but I will. It's I actually think it'll be simple. I mean, we have ample doors and spaces to gather, so it's just going to be in 3 separate locations instead of all together. But
Okay.
yeah, he and I always meet before school starts.
I have a question for Melissa or
Beth, you mentioned the cleaning and Alan, and I'm sure I actually got to talk to him about this.
Go ahead, Jay. You freeze?
Froze.
I missed your question, Jay.
Beth, I was just going to talk about, I guess, the cleaning methodology. I know I got to talk to Alan a little bit about this, but is that something that I should hold off for with respect to, a sort of a published plan that Alan provides us, or are there any details, like, I guess, any more than what your slide mentioned?
Those were the bullet points. I have his plan right here. Is this ready to go, Matt, or are you continuing to work on it with the facility managers?
Yeah, I mean, we're certainly, continuing to work and refine all of these plans, but I mean, if there's no harm in sharing what we have currently, if you'd like, Beth.
Yeah, I can put that on our website, Jason.
Okay, thank you.
Stamp draft for the moment, please.
Okay, I guess I should buy that stamp.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been using it a lot lately.
I bet. Every day.
Yes.
I have a couple questions for Melissa and or Caroline. The first one, Melissa, did I understand you that special education instruction in the classroom, person to person, may not happen and will be out in the hallway, or how will that take place as the students navigate their day?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, as much as possible, we'll have staff attached to pods. So as long as they're part of that cohort, they could be in the classroom. So I think it will be very likely that you'll see our educational associates, some of them being with pods throughout the day. And being with them in the classroom. But the special ed services would be pullouts. And so they might be in some of those breakout spaces. I don't think we would use hallways. So Beth was talking about those breakout spaces. So for instance, the OT-PT speech language room is large enough that they could have 3 students socially distanced with staff. And so we would do scheduling to make sure that, again, we're not having multiple kids from different cohorts in that room at the same time.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we would really work with families just like we did in the spring to be thoughtful, gracious, individualized about what students need, and then considering their disabilities and the fact that we're in a pandemic, what can we provide that lowers the risk and still provides the most amount of faith for inappropriate education for the student.
Okay, great. And my second question regards SEL support. How will the students who might need extra SEL support during the day receive that? I mean, we know this is very emotional time right now. Some of these kids are really struggling. If they do need it, it becomes overwhelming. What would the plan be to help them get through the day?
Greg, I don't think I can speak very specifically to a plan right now, but I will tell you that we have an SEL team among our staff in the school. And once they do put that together in this environment, I will report out on that. Jess Mason, Jess Bagley, Laura Wheeler, our guidance counselor, all have been part of that and have led the way with common language and all of that. But I will tell you that we do know that SEL lessons and, to lack of a better word, they'll all be part of our morning meetings in every cohort group.
Okay.
So, but I can give you more detail on that. Those days before school starts with the staff are critical to all of this planning.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Beth, are you done, Greg?
No, go ahead, John.
Beth, how are we going to handle students who wind up starting off in school and then leave due to illness, temporary illness? Are they going to go to the RLA, or are they going to be learning remotely via their own teacher?
I don't think I have that answer. David,
Yeah, David, Steve, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. It's something we've considered. I think ultimately that's going to be an academic decision for the kid. As we've mentioned earlier, the expectation throughout this whole thing, even in face-to-face instruction, we're going to have an online component to every class. I think it's going to depend on the connection that the student wants to remain with the face-to-face class. It's going to have to do with the length of time that they're out. But in cases where we know they're going to be out for an extended period of time and they're going to need those supports with the Remote Learning Academy, as I think Jason was mentioning, I think those walls can be breached a little bit. But yeah, that's how I would answer it. It's an academic decision.
Okay, so if they do want to transition to the RLA, the follow-up question there is, especially in the older grades for binary classes like math and science, in terms of keeping them synced. So if you're in the middle of algebra, for instance, and you were in the classroom and then you go to the RLA and they're teaching a different level or a different topic.
Yep.
We also could look at this as if, I mean, we've had children that have been sick in this building or broken bones or had accidents. And when they're out of school, we put together a plan for them. First of all, if they're ill, then allow them that time to be ill and recover, but also to begin to supply them with work as we can. And then when they come back, we usually have a makeup plan in place for them. I think it would be very hard to switch over to the Remote Learning Academy. You know, so if they've been part of this, because they are going to be a little bit different. But that's a great question, John.
There's a lot of depends in your question, John. It depends on how long. No, really, it depends on how long. You know, it depends on what courses they're taking. You asked about algebra. There are a lot of different things we can achieve depending on their particular situation. Beth just described, you know, we've done that for some kids with illness forever in some ways. Their courses in school will have a technology component or aspect to it that would allow them to do asynchronous work in that classroom while they're out, or they might be able to switch into, depending on the course or the program, they might be able to switch into the Remote Learning Academy. The good news here is there are a bunch of options we can look at for individual kids.
Okay.
Yeah, we always have makeup policies and things like that. Every child that gets sick this year won't necessarily have COVID. So
Right.
I think a lot of those practices that we've had in place will still exist.
And then another follow-up would be if we do wind up going to a shutdown, say in flu season or something like that, will there be a unification between those students and the RLA students, or would they be kept separate throughout?
David, how many times have you answered this question now, David? It's a great
big
question,
question.
but we keep being asked. It's a really terrific question. David?
It's a super question. Right now, just because we're going to have to staff it, my answer to you, given what I know now, is that the RLA would have to remain intact, as opposed to the whole thing kind of going back into a remote learning scenario. But boy, things have been pretty hard to predict thus far, so I don't want to write that in stone. But that's my current answer as we're planning.
Okay, great. And then Beth, just one more question, then I'll stop.
No, don't stop.
In terms of keeping outside people out of the building, have you thought at all about how that will impact outside educators like, say, DARE, Haven, things like that? Are we going to still try to do those programs, or will we try to not do them this year?
You know, something like Haven, I would love to hire them and do it remotely. But in terms of in the building, I think protecting the safety of everyone in it so that we can return safely. Some things are going to be missed. I do think that would have to be done remotely.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beth, I like the FM idea, the FM systems idea. I'm wondering if we can get some quotes and some numbers on that and start seeing what we can do about budgeting that.
Yeah, I actually, before we do that, I actually would like to get in a room with a mask on and try it out, see if it creates the improvement I'm hoping it will. I've been in classrooms. I've always thought they were universal accommodations. They're actually great. You know, my concern is that a teacher, first of all, the kids are a little bit further away in the same room, and then you're muffled a little bit. So it's just something that I think Melissa and I would like to look into, but I'll get you some quotes.
Okay, and Matt, if we go down that path.
Yeah, we already have a few in the building.
Okay, Matt, if we go down that path and expand this, is this something we can use the Special Education Trust to fund?
No, we wouldn't be able to use a special education trust because it wouldn't be for that purpose. That being said, we could certainly look at other areas where we may recognize savings, such as, you know, stipends that may not be paid out for, you know, for activities that don't happen, that outside, you know, vendor or speakers that we just spoke about that obviously that likely will not be in the building. So there's some areas that we'd have to explore and identify if we were to make that type of investment.
Title I available, or does it not qualify?
We don't have Title I funds this year.
Okay.
Yeah, the only, I mean, Greg, the only thing that's coming up where it may, you know, if there are additional federal dollars, I mean, it's certainly is an area where you could use some of those dollars depending on what we get. But there are some of those kinds of areas because it is an expense related to carrying on school in this environment. So
correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, there is not an identified funding source currently. It wouldn't qualify for FEMA funds.
Right.
So it would be a what if for stimulus funds. It would be somewhere in the operating budget where we'd see savings elsewhere. Those type of scenarios. So.
Okay. Beth, 3 rooms you haven't mentioned, or if you did, I missed them. The gym, the cafeteria, and the music room. You know, can we use those rooms as breakout rooms? Or what's your strategy?
That's exactly what they're going to be used for, Greg. And I've kept the cafeteria in my back pocket because, you know, that can be divided up. It's got ample windows. We could do a lot of things with that. In this plan, as it is, you're right, the gym and the caf haven't been spoken about. In the gym, we potentially, I don't know, that's a tough learning space in this environment. If people have masks on and the ventilation in that room is
Okay.
not up to snuff.
Right.
So I purposely haven't planned anything in that space just yet. The music room will be used as a breakout space in the 3 to 5 pod. Music, I'm currently in conversation with our music teacher, and she's in touch with her colleagues around the state and beyond how best to do music. I'm thinking right now it probably will best be served outside and probably in either tiny lessons or even one-on-one lessons. You know, guitar we can do in a small breakout room, but that's all to be determined. I can't wait to meet with our entire staff. We have a lot of things to decide, but those are great spaces.
Jason, go ahead, Jill.
Thank you. Two pretty unrelated questions. Maybe this is a question for David also. In the, if students enroll in the Remote Learning Academy, will there be an option to supplement with VLAX? I think I heard that brought up once, but I don't know if there's been any further thought on that.
That was the plan, right,
Yeah,
David?
Great.
Yes, that was the plan. We just, was it this week, last week, Bill? I don't even remember.
Last week, yeah.
VLAX made an announcement, you probably heard, that their subscription has, tripled, quadrupled, and they're basically, they're meeting capacity in terms of the demand that they'll be able to offer for those classes. So while it was on the menu before, it's going to be that much trickier to actually cover those resources for us, which, I got to say, we're in a really a good position that we kind of designed this Remote Learning Academy to begin with, because many of our counterpart SAUs did not. They planned on the VLAX partnership, and it's just it's evaporating. So unfortunately, that's the answer, is probably not.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying. And the other question, we've talked about the need to self-screen every day for everyone. And I think in previous meetings, we talked about the potential of an app. I'm wondering if there's still been thought in that direction. I know having that accountability and making sure that parents are accountable to that and staff are, just like, Doreen bugs us if we haven't checked off which way our kid is going home at the end of the day. I'm wondering how you're thinking that might work. Thanks.
Matt, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so we are still exploring various vendors for an online app to do that self-screening. That we feel that that's the most efficient manner in which to conduct that self-screening process. It's essentially 3 questions. So it's that sort of list of symptoms and temperature over 101.4. Then it's whether the staff or the student has traveled outside of New England, and whether you've been in contact with someone that's tested positive. So it's a real simple screening process. It's essentially 3 check marks, and we plan to have an online app ready for the start of school.
Great, thanks, Matt.
Any additional questions? Jay, Greg?
Yeah, I'll ask a couple. Beth, have you worked out what the process is when you have a student, if that tests positive, how that contact tracing and all, how that protocol evolves, how that takes place?
Yeah, our SAU-wide nurses are all working on plans that are SAU-wide, but also local, and I am not ready to speak to that this evening, but please know that plans are in place.
Caroline, why don't you, because you meet with the nurses, so you want to say a word about where we are in that development process?
Sure. So what the nurses are doing, all the SAU 21 and SAU 90 nurses, we meet weekly. We also listen in on the DHHS calls with Dr. Chan that are on Fridays, and then we meet on Mondays. So they've done a phenomenal job putting together some flow charts, but they're still under construction as far as how parents can, you know, whether there's an app or not, parents can look at that, and employees can look at that and determine if they need to quarantine or not, as far as symptoms, as far as travel. So they're looking at that. But as we know, sometimes students and staff come down with symptoms during the school day. So they might be in a position where students might be going to the health office, and the nurse might be in a position to determine if that student should go home. So what we're doing is, we know it's incredibly important for all of our nurses to be on the same page and using the same criteria for when a student needs to go home, because, you know, we share families across districts. You know, sometimes there's an older sibling at Winnacunnet, so we really need to be all on the same page with that protocol. So they're looking at that right now. They're also working on protocols as far as how to admit kids just coming into the office for an office visit, because under normal circumstances, students, you know, they can visit the nurse anytime. They can ask to go to the nurse. They might not be feeling well. They can get a pass and walk to the office. But we need to create different methods for that right now, because you know, there would only be a certain number of people or students who should be in those small offices at one time. And even furthermore, it could be that one student has a symptom and they need to be in a slightly separate space waiting for a parent to be picking them up. So the nurses are working on that. So at the end of the day, basically students would need to have appointments to be coming in, or at least for the teacher to be contacting the nurse for a student to have an appointment to come into the classroom. So all of those pieces are being worked on right now with the nurses.
And when it comes to a positive test, that gets referred to DHHS, and they take over that process. So once someone does test positive, DHHS takes over. They conduct the investigation as far as contact tracing. That isn't going to be in our hands. That'll be with DHHS, and then that student will not be allowed back into the school until they're cleared by DHHS or their doctor, or rather both in conjunction. So we won't be conducting contact tracing ourselves. That's really at the state level.
Bill, Caroline just mentioned Dr. Chan. For those in the audience who have no idea who he is, I wonder if you could briefly give a little background on him.
Yes, I believe, Caroline, if I'm correct, the state epidemiologist, and he heads the DHHS, the health and
Health and Human Services. So I believe
Health and Human Services.
I believe he's actually affiliated with UNH and DHHS. I believe he's affiliated with both, and he is often the person in partnership with the infectious disease state head of infectious disease. So before the governor gives updates almost daily, if not weekly at this point, he has someone from DHHS and Dr. Chan giving health updates before he gives, you know, whatever updates on restrictions. So he is holding calls on Fridays specifically for school nurses. There are a lot of additional school educators and administrators on at this point because it's very relevant and helpful for our planning right now, but it's specifically for school nurses. And actually, he did just announce that they'll be releasing a toolkit. So we're looking forward to seeing what that brings us.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions? Beth, Bill, and the board, if there's no more questions from the board, I was wondering if anybody would object to opening some questions up to the public. I'm sure there's some questions out there. and I don't know if how everyone feels about that.
I'm supportive.
Yep, no objection.
I am as well.
So with that said, we will open the floor up to the public for some questions. If we start to circle around questions or repetitive questions, we'll close it down. And if we don't get to all your questions, reach out to the board. Beth, we'll do everything we can to get you answers. But understand, as you've heard already, some of it hasn't fully been worked through yet. Most of it has, but not all of it. So, Rhonda, if there's any questions, we'll take a few.
Again, we just ask for you to state your name and address and your affiliation with the school. I have Whitney Nowak. I'm going to allow her to talk. Hi, Whitney. Whitney, are you there?
She's muted.
She's got to unmute herself. Whitney, or did you have a comment for the board? Whitney, can you hear us? We've given you permission to talk with the board and provide a comment, but we just can't hear you. So I guess I'm going to put her back out as an attendee. We'll see if anybody else has a question.
Okay.
Or maybe she'll be able to, yeah, because she's unmuted, so I'm not sure.
Right, notice that.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to slide her back out. I do see somebody else. Jillian Anita, I believe. Jillian, you want to state your name and address and your affiliation with the board or with the school?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'm here actually, Jillian Anita, 161 Kensington. I have a boatload of kids at Lincoln Ackerman. I don't even know what grades they're going into, so, but most people know me. Okay, a couple questions. One is in regards to PE. I know you mentioned the cafeteria space you're hoping, is that because you're planning on having PE outside? Is that, or if they're not PE?
I'll answer that. I haven't been able to speak with our PE staff yet, but PE will not be the contact sports and the team type sports that we're used to. So when I am able to talk with them, I can get back to you with that answer, Jillian. But in terms of the gym, the way we knew it, not going to happen right away. You know, there are lots of other activities. I know Wendy Welch is the jump rope champion, and she can, you know, jump ropes, hula hoops. There's all kinds of other different things. I just haven't had a chance to speak with them directly yet, but it will be social distanced exercise, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess another question was in regards to, I know in one of the slides it mentions with the pods for transportation for buses, they'll be traveling in the different pods. But if you have different kids and different pods, are they all going on like 2, 3 separate buses?
Buses have not been determined at all. It's going to depend on numbers and who needs it. So that's a big question mark still.
I can say a word to that too, Beth.
Okay.
So that's one of the important questions on the survey that we have out now, is whether people need our transportation and what we're going to have to do then. The reason we're asking for addresses and all with that is we want to see what kind of demand there is for our buses and whether we can appropriately social distance on them, those kinds of things. I mean, we're going to encourage people in most of our schools to drive their kids to school if they can, because we simply aren't going to be able to put as many students on buses as we normally would.
Okay, thank you. And then sorry, I have a few questions. Another one was, I missed the states that we cannot travel to. I saw the list and then it went by me. So if someone can just tell me the states again, I'd really appreciate it.
Travel outside of New England, essentially.
Okay. Okay, great. And then in regards to the FM systems, I think that I think the key for me, I know I have a child who uses one for their own needs, and I think knowing that that's being looked at in regards to the muffling and all those things, I think I know everyone's gonna, but just was wondering, sure that that's going to be worked out fully before. That was just more of a comment, I guess.
Okay. So Jillian, do you mind if I chime in?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. I guess I was actually kind of making sure it was okay with the board, but glad that it's okay with you, Jillian. So I just want, I know that you're aware, but good for other families to be aware that we do consult with and what's called an educational audiologist. And so those are things that are part of the conversations that I'm having with her.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm here with my sister. I just wanted to see if she has no more questions. Do you have any questions?
Jillian, this is Greg. If you don't mind, I don't mean to cut you off. If we could let a few people ask questions, and if you can come back.
I'll leave.
Thanks.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me time. Thanks.
Okay, it looks like we have a Melissa Potter.
Coder, yeah.
Melissa, can you hear us?
Hi, this is her husband, Jeremy Potter. How are you tonight?
Good.
My daughter Amelia goes to school there. I live on Exeter Road. I was just a little confused about the traveling. Well, that's, and maybe I missed it. So if the children travel outside of New England, they stay home for 14-day self-quarantine. Does that go for if parents of children travel outside of the New England states or even internationally?
So that's our understanding is that's a state, I don't know if I want to call it order. I don't know exactly what the governor's called it and has in place, but that's we're merely reflecting what the state of New Hampshire has put in place for all residents.
Okay.
But if the parent travels, that doesn't affect the student's ability to go to school.
Right, right.
Okay. So even if the parent of a child is traveling to, say, a hot zone or internationally, they would be still living in the house with a child who would end up going to the school, correct? One would assume, I'm sorry.
That's correct. That's what's consistent with the state order.
Okay. So even though that parent might be traveling, that doesn't affect the child's ability to go to school.
It's the people who traveled.
Okay.
The parent would have to test positive for it to affect the child.
Correct. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have someone by the name of Marcy. Marcy, if you want to introduce yourself with your first and last name, your address, and tell your affiliation with the school. Marcy, are you there? So I'm going to place Marcy back out in the attendees. And if maybe she accidentally raised her hand, we do have that sometimes. And we, looks like Whitney Nowak is going to try to talk or provide a comment. Whitney, can you hear us this time?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
There you go.
How are you guys? Beth, you did a great job. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
So I just have a question. If it's an abbreviated school day, which is essentially like an early release day, I know it's going to go a little, an hour later, but are we looking at then the remote learning continuing at home for kids who are attending in person, or how will those extra hours be made up?
Dr. Lupini?
Yeah, they won't. I mean, in the in-person model that we've talked about, because of us trying to move prep time and some other aspects around lunch in the case of this building, we've looked at least at the beginning of this And hopefully we're transitioning over the course of the year to longer days. But at least at the beginning of this, in all the elementary schools that are looking at this, we're looking at essentially 4 to 4.5 hour days. And again, the reason we're looking at that is really having to do at many places with not wanting to try to do lunches in classrooms and make sure that the time that we have there is time that teachers are spending with kids, and therefore they get their prep time after the students leave.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We have someone by the name of Anthony Lang.
Yep, Anthony Lang, 2 Woodlawn Avenue. I have 2 kids in school. I just have a comment on the way the bus question was worded on both of the surveys. It is, if bus transportation is available, would you use it? As opposed to, do you require bus transportation? So I think those are very different questions, because if a bus is rolling down my street, I will put my children on it. But I live close enough to school to get my child there. It's just, I wanted to bring it up in case it hasn't been addressed yet, because I do think verbiage is important in surveys.
Thank you.
We have someone by the name of Mark Marshall.
Hi. Yeah, I was just wondering, so I have a going into 2nd grade. We're in Wellington Farms. So I was wondering, I don't know if it was tonight or if it was in the meeting the other day, you talked about, with 6-foot separations, roughly 11 kids in a class, and you're still showing one section for 2nd grade. And I'm just wondering how that's going to work out.
That's where the UA teachers will come in, Mark. We're going to have to, when we get here, craft a schedule using more adults. You're right. There is currently a 19 student 2nd grade and a 19 student 5th grade. So that's why we have more teachers attached to each pod. We're also going to, we can get those schedules to you as we get closer to the school year. But when staff gets here, those are the details that we need to work out.
Okay. And just one more quick, I missed a gap of this meeting, a little gap as we were putting the kids to bed, but was there a discussion about how quarantining is going to work? Like if a kid in class is exposed or if a kid in class gets positive, and how that affects the rest of the class in terms of quarantining?
Yeah, so our nurses are developing those procedures. They've been working for the last few weeks to try to put procedures together of what happens in a number of situations, almost in the form of a flow chart, so that we can publish that so that parents can see exactly what happens if someone in their child's class tests positive, or if someone in the class's parent tests positive, all those kinds of things. And I would guess we're a week to 2 weeks, I'm looking at Caroline, away from making sure that we can publish all of those guidelines that the nurses will use across our schools.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Rhonda,
Yes.
we have a pretty lengthy agenda, so I'm gonna, if the board doesn't mind, I'll take one more question. We'll try to do a follow-up later on, but why don't we do one more question so we can move on? Sorry about that to the attendees, but let's do one more.
We have someone by the name of Marcy. I think this is her 2nd attempt, so let's hope that it's successful.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. My name is Marcia, and I live on Woodlawn Avenue, Hampton Falls, and I have Eddie and Elizabeth, and they're going into 6th and 8th grade. My question is, I know that there are some teachers or staff that are not coming back, and how will it look for classes that do not have the teachers coming back? Is there a plan in place for teachers who will be unable to come in for some reason?
So we're still working through that, and I made a comment earlier about Exeter. which could cause us additional issues with our educators and their own family situations. But we're going to start, I think, this Thursday as we start meeting individually with principals and their administrative teams to start to work through that. I mean, it'll be a different answer at every building depending on the role that the person plays. We may bring in subs, they may be in a certain number of days. It's just going to vary with respect to the particular accommodations that an individual teacher might need. So we're going to work with Beth around those people as soon as we can legally sort of start talking about those situations.
Right.
And try to figure that out on an individual basis.
But we do know we have results of like who is not coming back.
No, no. We have requests right now. We have requests under either ADA or under the COVID bill from this spring, some of them having to do with teachers and their own disabilities or health reasons or health reasons of people in their home. So we have people who've submitted parts of that documentation, have filed additional pieces of that documentation, or quite frankly, with respect to childcare, are still in the process of trying to figure out what the district where they live is going to do so they know if they have a problem. And so we'll be working, my sense is we'll be working with teachers right up to the beginning of the school year on issues like this.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Marcia, can you provide me with your last name for the record? I didn't get that earlier.
Yeskowitz, Medford.
Did you spell that for me? I'm sorry.
Why don't we just go with Medford? MEDFORD.
Okay, thank you. It just wasn't listed on your login ID.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to close the public comment. If you didn't get your question answered, please feel free to reach out. We'll do what we can to get your answers to you. Does the board have any other questions for Beth, Bill? Anything? Okay. I know this is a very serious subject, but if I can add a little levity to it, are we going to be ready for blizzard bags?
Are you serious, Greg?
Somebody mute the chair, will you please?
So, anyway.
No. Okay, so here's the serious answer, right? The serious answer is what we build into this plan.
That's right.
With having a technology component to every course is we don't believe we have a need in the future to have snow days or heat days that we have to make up. We believe we're going to be able to continue on with kids in terms of what's available to them through Google Classroom or whatever it may be, so that we can count those days and they become instructional days for our students.
So there's a positive here, and that's great.
Well, yeah, you got to look kind of hard, but yes, there's a bit of a positive here.
Okay.
It's gonna be 70, Greg, it's going to be 75 degrees from October to June.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any final questions for the board? From the board? I see no questions. We'll move on to new business. Item A, school board audit questionnaire.
Yeah, so as you know, we do hire a audit firm to conduct an annual audit of our financials. And as part of that process, the firm, Plodzik and Sanderson, does request that the board complete a questionnaire in regard to financial controls. So I'm going to run through the list of questions and ask that the board answer verbally at this time. The first question is, do you have any knowledge or suspicions of fraud affecting your entity?
No.
Have you received any communications from employees, former employees, regulators, or others alleging fraud?
No.
Have you identified any specific risks of fraud within your entity?
No.
Has the board adopted a universal code of ethics for members and employees to follow?
Yes.
If yes, does this document prohibit elected officials and employees from doing business with the entity?
Yes.
Have you or any related party of yours had any interest, direct or indirect, in any of the following transactions or pending or incomplete transactions since July 1st, 2019, to which the school district SAU or any retirement, savings, pension, or other similar plan was or is to be a party The first item is the sale, purchase, exchange, or leasing of property.
No.
Receiving or furnishing of goods, services, or facilities.
No.
Transfer or receipt of income or assets.
No.
Maintenance of bank balances as compensating balances for the benefit of another.
No.
Any other transactions?
No.
Does the board formally authorize all disbursements, both vendor and payroll, prior to the release of funds?
Yes.
Describe how the board stays informed of the latest changes in the laws and regulations pertaining to the entity.
Updates are provided through the superintendent and the SAU office.
Does the board review comparative reports of estimated and actual revenues and appropriations and expenditures?
Yes.
If yes,
Month-
how
I'm
often?
sorry, monthly. Sorry, Matt.
Thank you. What procedures does the board follow in reviewing or using these reports? For example, does the board normally meet with the department heads as part of this process? Also, does the board review both the revenue and expenditure reports?
Both revenue and expenditure reports are reviewed monthly at board meetings by the business administrator.
Has the board approved a disaster recovery plan in the event of loss or interruption of the IT function?
Yes.
Is there a written investment policy adopted?
Yes.
And that was last reviewed and approved on the 22nd of October of 2019. Have you adopted the use of either debit or credit cards by employees?
Yes.
Does the board have knowledge of any funds or bank accounts that are not in the custody of the treasurer?
Yes.
And those are the student activity funds that are managed by Elizabeth Rossi, the principal, as well as the expendable trust funds that are managed by the Hampton Falls trustees of the trust funds. Has the board approved a fund balance policy in compliance with GASB 54?
Yes.
Does the school district SAU have knowledge of any crowdfunding activities?
No.
Since the World Health Organization's declaration of the worldwide pandemic due to coronavirus COVID-19, how has the board adapted to making financial decisions, reviewing budget versus actual reports, and approving vendor and payroll manifests?
All board meetings have been held via the Zoom format. Financial reports are uploaded through board docs for review. DocuSign electronic signature software was purchased. All manifest, payroll, and accounts payable are scanned, sent to the board members for signatures. All backup documents are supplied.
Thank you. So at this point, I will send this questionnaire to the board chair via DocuSign for signature, and I will submit to the auditors. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Next on the agenda is the extracurricular stipends committee recommendation.
Yeah, so per the 2019-2023 collective bargaining agreement with our teachers union, it does mandate that an extracurricular stipend committee meets on an annual basis. The purpose of this committee is to review our extracurricular stipend list and see if any adjustments are warranted, and as such, make any recommendations for changes to the school board for their approval. This committee did meet in July and did come up with some minor recommendations. We are recommending that the school board approve renaming the LAS Communications Coordinator stipend to a Flex Activities stipend, and this will allow the flexibility and the ability to offer different activities based on student participation and needs. Sometimes we'll see from year to year with different student populations that there's a desire or participation rates for different activities, and this offers us the ability to flexibly adjust those positions. So by making this adjustment, there is no additional funding or cost to the school district, but we are asking that the board approve this name change on the list.
Do we vote on that now, Matt, or can we do it at the end of the meeting?
You can do it at the end of the meeting. It's your preference.
Are we not going to vote like as the items come up and the way they are in board docs?
You know what? Let's do that because we might forget that. So can I get a motion to accept the stipends committee recommendations?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
I'll second that.
Rhonda, roll call.
Greg Marrow,
Aye.
I'm sorry, Greg, I didn't hear that.
Oh, aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yes, okay. Greg Parrish,
Yes.
Jason Farias,
Yes.
Bill Swayze,
Yep. Yes.
and John Bailey.
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Thank you. Next item is the school board retreat with the New Hampshire School Board Association. Bill, I think that's you. You're muted, Bill.
Rhonda's been doing most of the work on this. Rhonda, do you want to mention, I know you looked at dates, possible dates with their availability?
Yes, with Will and Barrett. We were able to pin down the date of next Wednesday, August 19th is what we're proposing. That would be a morning meeting. It will be approximately 2 hours. And I will open my calendar and tell you
8:30 to 10.
we're considering.
You have 8:30 to 10:30 on the hold.
Okay, that's what we're looking at, so.
That works.
Yeah.
So you need the board's availability for that meeting, correct?
Yes.
Right, I believe the intent is to have all 5 board members present for that.
If we can, that'd be great. This is an opportunity for us to, to take a look at ourselves, see what we want to do as a board, refocus ourselves, maybe define the future going forward. So that's kind of the intent here, with the assistance of hopefully Barrett, Christina, with some great training. I'm available that day, so I can make it.
Is there a little flexibility in that timing to shift it half an hour later?
As long as it's that morning.
9 to 11 instead of 8:30 to 10:30, if that can work for others.
I think that will, from what I'm looking at, as long as that works with Barrett and Will, because they were both going to be present for that.
Works with me. Thank you.
If that's feasible, that would help me out of a bit of a work pickle.
So we're looking at 9 to 11 on Wednesday, the 19th.
Okay. Jay, you're muted.
Yep. I'm just putting that down before I forget it.
I will send you guys all the calendar invites tomorrow morning. So yeah, you'll get a calendar invite from me, and then that means all 5 board members are available for that, correct?
Greg, you're available. John?
That is literally the only window that I have that whole week. So that's absolutely perfect.
Great. That's fantastic. John, you're good?
Guys.
Yeah. To go.
Book it. Okay.
Got it.
You're all set, Rhonda, with that one?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Item D is the newsletter. Earlier this year, the select board voted to change how they do the newsletter. And in the newsletter, they no longer include the school or the library. Another board member has brought this idea to at least talk about this tonight to my attention. And so I didn't know if the board had any thoughts. I'd like to try to get back on the select board's newsletter, but if that's not an option, I think it's important we have something we get out to the community. So I don't know what the board has for thoughts.
Yeah, and Greg, the only suggestion I made when we were planning this agenda is we've seen through the last 5 months a number more of SAUs who are contracting with communication professionals to do that kind of thing for them. I know there are districts in our area that do that. There are more that have added it during the pandemic. And there are a number of different people who do that kind of work for school districts. Because it's hard to do out of our office. It's hard to do at the building level when you're trying to run a school, and it's certainly hard for a board to do. So we were going to investigate that. We haven't yet. I haven't had time. I was going to do it since we had that meeting, Greg, but I've been a little busy. Something we can continue to look into.
Bill, that's brilliant. We outsource all of that sort of stuff in my professional office, and everybody's crazy busy. And before, it used to be Pam Miller, And even then, she was crazy busy. And honestly, this is the sort of information that we need to continually engage the community with. So I'm all for that.
Yeah, I'll second that, Greg. I just want to get this information out, know all the hard work that you're doing, gives folks a chance to digest this information at their pace. I think it's a good thing. And however we get it out there, you'll have my support.
Yeah, I would agree, but I don't want it at the cost of delaying this unnecessarily. So that would only be my caution. I'm all for working with the right professionals to do the right job, but I think that we have a requirement to our community beyond our school community to report what's happening and at least direct them. We have a lot of information online, and we're very capable of sending letters and directing them to where they can find that information. Even at the 30,000 foot view, we have a lot to report. There are task groups that have been forming and dealing with issues. We have a new playground. We have 2 new school board members. We have, there's a lot we can share at a high level just to make the community aware that, their hard-earned tax dollars are going to a lot of good. And we are meeting regularly to consider how we use it responsibly. And I would personally vote for doing an independent letter and not doing it with the town.
So Bill, do you have, I'm sorry, do you have time to do more research on this in the next X number of days?
Yes, it's not that,
Okay.
that difficult of a research project. There are a few that I know of. There are a few that do work in New Hampshire. So yes, that's easy enough to look into.
Okay.
And I would, I would be happy, I'm not sure what protocol is here, but Bill, if you connect me with folks, I'd be happy to initiate some of those conversations.
Thank you.
Great.
That would be perfect.
And Joe, I agree with you. If I have no problem just doing an only school newsletter. So however this plays out, I'm okay with that. So any additional questions or comments on this subject?
Great, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the list is personnel ratification nomination. Do we need to go into non-public for this?
We do.
Which item is it?
Sorry.
Oh, there it is. Can I make a motion to go into roll call to enter a non-public session under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, item B? Rhonda, can you do a roll call? You're muted.
Do we need a second first?
I'll second that.
All right, Jason Farias,
Yes.
Greg Merrill,
Yes, here.
John Bailey,
Yes.
Greg Parrish,
Yes.
and Jill Swayze.
Yes.
So let me say to our attendees that, and I guess we're going to have to do this the same way, David. Sorry. The board will return from this non-public, but only to consider the item of hiring in the public session when they return. That's the only item that they'll take up when we return.
Would you like me to stay here or to sign off?
I usually keep it open because you have to be a host to keep it open. So
you can stay here.
I'm happy to stay.
Okay.
Okay, so
You're in your hand.
folks, school board members, you do have an invite from me to attend another Zoom meeting. We jump off and jump onto that one, please.
Where can I find that, David? You're muted.
he's going to send you an email right now.
Yeah, your inbox.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we physically leave this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Join
Rhonda
the
will
other.
keep it open, right?
Okay.
Rhonda, I'm leaving this and then doing what?
Yep.
Then what do I do?
You're going to open up the email that Dave sent you and click on a Zoom link for a new meeting.
Oh, God. Okay.
And I think I get to just stay with you, Rhonda, right?
Yeah. So Greg will do the same thing when he leaves. Both Gregs. I have Greg
Oh, I need
Merrill.
to leave. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. You'll leave this. So Greg, did you catch all that? You're going to leave this meeting and you're going to open up your email and log into the non-public meeting that Dave Hobbs just sent you an email for.
Okay. That's going to be on a different computer. So it'll take me a second to go get that.
Oh, okay. Whatever either way, you'll log out of this one.
You bet.
And then you will just open up your email and it will provide you a link to the non-public meeting that they're holding on a different Zoom. And then you'll come back to this one when you're done.
That's crazy. Okay, so I literally just log out, right?
Yeah, you just put leave the meeting.
Oh my gosh.
Down the bottom right, it'll say
Yep.
like end.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
You're
See ya.
welcome.
Hey, Rhonda.
There is always something new.
Yes, there is. I was in a conference last week, I think it was, and they put us into breakout sessions. Well, breakout sessions in the Zoom. It's interesting. How's your day going?
It's good. It's crazy. And we are still on camera, just so you know. We're still on. Yeah, okay.
I don't plan on, even when I think I'm off camera, behaving in a way that I would want to on camera.
No, I always like to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So.
It's still recording, I can see.
Oh yeah, you know what? Good call. I gotta shut that off.
Our numbers are fluctuating at Lincoln Ackerman.
I'm gonna start recording again.
Okay, can I get a motion to re-enter non-public? Or re-enter our regular meeting?
Motion to enter our public meeting.
And a second?
Second that.
Roll call, Rhonda?
Greg Merrill? Greg, you want to turn your mic on? We need to do this, yeah, we need to do roll call for because of the Zoom thing. So Greg Merrill?
Sorry, I'm trying to get that thing unmuted. Yes.
Greg Parrish?
Yes.
Jason Farias?
Yes.
Jill Swayze?
Yes.
And John Bailey?
Yes, and I'm back in a public area, the house with family in and out.
Okay, thank you. I have that vote recorded, Greg.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to ratify the superintendent's nomination and hiring of Amanda Perron for the elementary teacher position for the 2020-2021 school year. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Rhonda, can we take a roll call?
Jason Farias?
Yes.
Jill Swayze?
Yes.
John Bailey?
Yes.
Greg Merrill?
Yes.
And Greg Parrish?
Yes.
I have that vote recorded.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Welcome, Amanda. We look forward to meeting you.
The next meeting date, we have joint policy on the 26th. That's for myself. Our next board meeting is on September 8th. Beth or Bill, anything else?
I'm just going to give you an update. So
Oh, no.
the time we've been in our meeting, we now have 301 responses to our survey and 71 responses from Hampton Falls. So
Good.
we are at the third mark in, less than 6 hours. We have a third, that's great. And so just encourage people who are still with us as attendees. If you know people whose kids are at school in Hampton Falls, please encourage them to fill out the survey so that we don't have to go looking for them after next Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you all very much.
On that, will Beth send an email out independently, or can you? Just because Bill, your emails are excellent, but there's been so many of them that I only worry that it becomes a little white noise.
So this one came from David.
Apparently I'm ignoring you too, Dave. Sorry.
Sense taken.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
With Bill's, obviously, when he and I talk, whatever you need me to send out to encourage the survey, all that type of things, so that we can have all the proper information, I'd be happy to send something out if it supports it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Beth, great job. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Great job.
Bye.
Good night.